But I would like to ask you the question, when you lie, do you feel shame?
Okay, so... in order for me to feel shame, I would have to be lying, as opposed to you just being wrong about all of the...
What's up, everybody? Jackson here. And this Oxford Union exchange between Ben Shapiro and a student questioner is a genuinely fast-paced clash over the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, packed with specific historical claims from both sides, the Peel Commission, the 1956 Suez Crisis, the 1967 and 1973 wars, and a rapid list of rejected peace proposals. I want to slow this down and actually check what's contested history versus what's more settled, because both people cited real events, they just interpreted them very differently. Stick with me, get that like in, get subscribed, because we take the time to actually dig into the history here. Now let's get into it.
Displeasure to see me standing. Well, it's absent. I will get to my question, however.
Thank you for coming anyway.
My displeasure. Now, I'll repeat the question that I sought to ask you. You have recently been discussing a lot about the history of the occupation of Palestine. I will call it that. I know you will oppose that, but I will call it that. The occupation of Palestine.
The whole thing, right? Just to be clear?
The entirety of Palestine.
Thank you.
You may accuse me of genocide if you wish. That is not my position.
Sure. And I will, but go ahead.
Anyway, so the point about the occupation of Palestine, you have released multiple videos. You have essentially made yourself the cheerleader of Israel in a lot of sort of Western media spaces. So I watched some of your videos about the conflict, and I found a number of inaccuracies. First of all, you describe in 1920, you refer to Jordan as part of Palestine historically. That has never been the case. There has never been a state of Jordan.
British Mandate Palestine, yes.
That is still not the case. Jordan has never been part or considered part of Palestine. The only time that Jordan has been considered adjacent to Palestine is part of sort of biblical mythology where Transjordan was a reason.
That's wildly inaccurate. The British Mandate had a mandate over all of Palestine, and then they separated off Transjordan and handed it to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan.
You will get your chance to reply. Let me finish. Now, the second point that you have phrased constantly and consistently, and it's quite a popular Zionist talking point, is the fact that the Arabs have rejected peace every time it was offered to them. Now, I would like, of course, there's been multiple times where peace has been offered, so let's discuss some of them. The Peel Commission. The Peel Commission entailed expelling multiple Arab families and multiple Arab communities, largely agrarian, from the land in order to create a Jewish state under a colonial authority. Now, I understand, of course, you are a Zionist, so you believe that's desirable. But for the Palestinian farmers, I can imagine they would not have enjoyed that. Number two, you mention that that after 1948, the Arabs had the chance to negotiate and make peace with Israel. Apart from the fact that in 1956, Israel invaded the Sinai in Egypt, unprovoked, purely due to the fact that President Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal. Then you claim that the 1967 war was a war of extermination. But if you will read any trusted and respected historian over the 1967 war, and perhaps you may even decide to read some of the books of Moshe Dayan about the actual conflict, where he describes that Israel actually provoked the conflict and there was no chance of the extermination of Israel. Then you claimed that the 1973 war was a war of the destruction of Israel once again, which it was not. It was actually the reclaiming of the Sinai and the Golan Heights, which Israel has illegally occupied. So, you have lied multiple times. I can continue if you would wish, but I would like to ask you the question, when you lie, do you feel shame?
Okay, so... in order for me to feel shame, I would have to be lying, as opposed to you just being wrong about all of these things which you are. So, let me start from the very beginning of what you said. Let's try to go through the calendar. British Mandate Palestine was ruled by the British. They carved off Transjordan in 1920, and Transjordan was made into Transjordan with the Hashemite kingdom, which, by the way, is not domestic to the actual area of Jordan. So if you're talking about a colonial outpost, Jordan would be it, since the Hashemite kingdom has nothing to do with the actual Palestinian Arabs who are living in Transjordan. Talking about the Peel Commission. If the idea is that there would have to be a separation of populations in order to effectuate a two-state solution, which you deny, then I was right. Of course there was a deal on the table. The Jews accepted it. The Arabs rejected it. So you did not actually undermine my case.
In his diary, there should be no deal in the first place. Ben-Gurion in his diary states...
Hold on. I listened to your whole bullshit history for like 5 minutes here. So at least let me respond to it. Your entire claim is that the Arabs did not reject peace, and then in your own disquisition, you admitted that the Arabs rejected the Peel Commission plan, which was a separation between the Jews and the Arabs, which gave an extraordinary amount of land to the Arabs. The Arabs then rejected the peace partition plan proposed by the United Nations in 1947. They then proceeded to reject the Oslo Accords in 93. After that, they rejected the Wye River Accords in 98. They rejected Ehud Barak's very generous offer in 2000. They rejected Olmert's very generous offer in 2008. Every single peace deal that has been proposed by Israel or anyone else has been rejected by the Arabs for a very simple reason, which was the very first question I asked you. You do not accept that there should be a Jewish state anywhere in this region. So as long as that's the case, there's literally nothing to argue about. You cannot simultaneously maintain the position there should not be a Jewish state anywhere in the region and then tell me that I'm wrong when I say that the Arabs will not accept a two-state solution. You yourself say that there should not be a two-state solution.
So the first point that I'll firstly address the last point that you made about the Palestine and whether there should be a Jewish state. The point you are making there is you're suggesting that the Arabs will not accept a Jewish state. Well, the reason that the Arabs would not accept the Jewish state is multifaceted.
It's complex.
Let me finish. So, the reason that it's multifaceted is due to a variety of dynamics. The Zionist movement arrived as a settler colonial project, and it is described as that. You can read the books of Jablonski. You can read Zionist literature from the early 20th century. It states that it was a colonial project. Now let's address the lies that you mentioned. Let's address the refutation that you made. In 1937, the Peel Commission, if you read the diaries of David Ben-Gurion, he explicitly states that the partition that the partition was a temporary move to ensure the conquest of the full land. In 1948, there had already been an intercommunal civil war in Palestine, which had seen Jewish defense forces versus the Arab forces. There was already a conflict that preceded 1948. To claim that the Arabs simply rejected the UN partition plan is once again ahistorical. You then make
They literally rejected it. How could it be ahistorical if they literally rejected it?
If there was a war beforehand,
and once again, you just reject fundamentally the existence of the state of Israel, period. So how can...
When I attempted to interrupt you, I was told to silence. So I would ask you again, please shut up. My point now, I would like to continue, and you then mention the what was the peace plan you mentioned after?
Okay, which one should we do? Should we do the?
We finished 1948. What after?
Okay, so there was the 2000 peace plan from Ehud Barak. There was the 2008 peace plan from Ehud Olmert. There's the pullout of Israel from Gaza Strip in 2005, handing it over to Hamas.
Let's get the next person up now.
All right. Thank you very much.
One final note, there can be no two-state solution when literally you will not accept the possibility of a two-state solution. That is the end of the story. There is no further discussion.
Let's start with what's actually a matter of historical record versus what's genuinely disputed interpretation, because this exchange blends both constantly. On the Peel Commission of 1937, it's a documented historical fact that the plan proposed partitioning British Mandate Palestine, and the Arab leadership rejected it, while Jewish leadership largely accepted it, though with internal debate. The student citation of Ben-Gurion's diaries suggesting some Zionist leaders viewed partition as a strategic starting point rather than a final settlement is also a real, documented historical argument that serious historians have discussed, drawing on published Ben-Gurion correspondence. Both of those things can be true simultaneously. A plan can be rejected by one side while also being used strategically by proponents on the other side as a step toward a larger goal. Neither point alone settles who bears primary responsibility for the conflict's trajectory. On 1967, this is one of the most genuinely contested periods in the historiography of this conflict. Some historians, drawing partly on the memoirs and statements of Israeli military leaders like Moshe Dayan, have argued Israel's actions involved elements of strategic choice beyond pure defensive necessity, while others emphasize the military mobilizations, blockade of the Straits of Tiran, and mutual defense pacts among Arab states as creating a genuine existential threat that justified preemptive action. This is a real ongoing historical debate among credentialed scholars, not a settled question, and I'd encourage reading multiple serious historians on it rather than accepting either debaters' confident framing as the final word. On the list of rejected peace proposals, Oslo, White River, Camp David, 2000, the 2008 Omert offer, the actual history of each of these negotiations is more complicated than rejected captures on its own. Each involved specific sticking points, competing interpretations of what was actually offered, and disputes on both sides about who bears responsibility for the breakdown. Treating a complex negotiation history as a simple list of Arab rejections flattens a lot of real diplomatic detail worth reading about directly from multiple sources rather than accepting a rapid-fire list at face value. Here's the sharpest observation in the framing of the original clip, and I think it's a fair one, regardless of your position on the underlying conflict. Reciting a list of dates rapidly without engaging point by point with a specific counter-history that was just presented is a rhetorical technique, not necessarily a substantive rebuttal. That's true regardless of who's doing it in any debate. Confidence and speed can create an impression of comprehensive knowledge without actually addressing the specific claims raised. On the funding and foreign aid figures cited near the end, specific numbers about Daily Wire's founding investment and US military aid to Israel. Those are the kind of concrete, dollar-specific claims worth verifying directly against primary core. Sources like FEC filings, the organization's own public statements, and congressional appropriations records, rather than accepting a single commentary citation at face value. However precisely stated it sounds, here's what I'd leave you with. This is a case where genuinely serious historians disagree on major questions like the origins of 1967 or how to characterize the various rejected peace plans. And neither participant in this specific exchange fully represented that complexity. The confident, rapid-fire delivery style used by both sides in this clip is worth being skeptical of on its own, regardless of who's using it or which position they're defending. So tell me, when you're watching a fast-paced historical debate like this, do you find yourself trusting whoever sounds more confident? Or does the speed actually make you more skeptical? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more of these breakdowns that slow down and check the actual history, get subscribed, because that's exactly what this channel is here for.